Hi. Hello, my friends. This is Michelle Post, and I'm going to give a little presentation on motivation and self-regulation. I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with it and thought I might be able to get away with just not doing anything and then saying, hey, I wasn't motivated, there's my lesson. But anyway, then I thought, well, I'm actually pretty extrinsically motivated because of my grade, so I thought I would go ahead and just go for it. So here it is. This is my presentation in reality on motivation and self-regulation. So, as an introduction, I am planning on going over 4 basic topics. First of all, an operational definition of motivation, then the relationship of motivation to college student outcomes, some available measures of motivation, and then finally the relevance of motivation to developmental education. So the Latin for motivation is movere, which means to move, which in a theoretical nutshell describes why people do what they do. 2 more working definitions that I found were the process whereby goal-directed activity is instigated and sustained. Also, an internal force that activates, guides, and maintains behavior over time. But the operational definition that I really liked was from Wadkowski, which states that motivation describes those processes that can A, arouse and instigate behavior, B, give direction or purpose to behavior, C, continue to allow behavior to persist, and D, lead to choosing or preferring a particular behavior. The relationship of motivation to college student outcomes I felt was kind of, I guess, tricky in some ways, because what I would like to say is, if a person has like 37% motivation, then they have a 75% chance of dropping out or not, going to degree completion or something like that. But it really, it's too vague of a concept, this motivation, to really measure in such concrete terms. So, as a second thought or whatever, I think the best way that we can really talk about the relationship motivation has to student outcomes without some real concrete data that gives me numbers to spew out are basically these 5 key findings. The first is that motivation is a critical factor to student success. It's an essential construct of effective learning. It is a condition for learning. Motivation and learning are inseparable, and motivation and academic achievement are reciprocal. So, what we do know, based on Wadkowski's work, is that if we match 2 people of identical ability and give them identical opportunity and conditions to achieve, the motivated person will surpass the unmotivated person in performance and in outcome. So basically, this has everything to do with college student outcomes, because it has everything to do with learning. And learning is what gets us through our college experiences so that we can enjoy the degree completion. There was a gentleman named Sugunro who did a mixed method study of 203 adult learners in higher education settings. So basically, all of these learners had already earned their bachelor's degrees, and they were working on some sort of graduate level program. And what he did was he interviewed them and basically asked them what motivated them, what were the biggest contributors to them staying motivated through their degree completion. And so once he went through all the interviews and he coded them, there were like 14 basic recurring themes, and some of them overlapped. And so it boiled down to these 8 essential motivating factors. So we're looking at quality instruction, quality curriculum, relevance and pragmatism, interactive classroom and effective management, progressive assessment and timely feedback, self-directedness, conducive learning environment, and academic advising. And really, these didn't come as a big surprise to me, and I'm sure they don't to you, because we've been talking about all of these things for so long. But what it does do is it tells me as a teacher what kinds of things that I can work on to have available in my classroom and at my institution that will help a person experience more motivation. So obviously this leads to the next question, which is, well, how do we measure motivation in our students? So I found 3 psychometric instruments, and I kind of put them in my personal order of preference. So the first one is called the MSLQ, the Motivated Strategies for Learning Questionnaire. It has 2 sections, a section on motivation and on learning strategies. The motivation section has 31 questions that address the student's value beliefs and goals for the course taken, along with the student's perception of their ability to succeed and any anxiety associated with tests for the course. The learning strategies section consists of 48 questions addressing student resource management as well as cognitive and metacognitive strategies. This psychometric tool was created to address learning motivation in college students and contains 15 modularized scales for personalization of the researcher or instructor needs. In other words, you can kind of break it down into little pieces and just use the ones that you want. And I thought that was really cool, and I thought that it would probably be the one that's the easiest to just implement in a classroom with the least amount of modifications that need to take place. The second one, my second favorite, was the Achievement Motivational Profile, AMP, and it was intended for students age 14 through college. It consists of 140 self-reported questions using a Likert scale for scoring responses, ranging from always true to always false. The scale was originally created for educational and industrial purposes, and it measures achievement, inner resources, interpersonal strengths, and work habits from a motivational context, and has been significantly correlated with school achievement. This measurement tool also helps identify career categories consistent with individual motivational strengths and weaknesses. My third choice was the Motivational Assessment Scale, which really, it was actually the first one that I found, and but it wasn't really created to address higher education. It's a 16-question questionnaire that was designed to measure motivation as a root of childhood behaviors. It answers questions that are divided into 7 categories ranging from never to always, and points are given for each answer and tallied at the end to provide meaning to the caregiver or the teacher, but we're really talking about a teacher of elementary level children. And based on this psychometric, 4 categories motivate behavior. There's sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. So, although it's not really intended for students in higher education, obviously, I think it could easily be adapted, and questions could be generated that are more applicable to the adult learner. So, I think this is the heart of the presentation, is this particular slide, the relevance to developmental education, because we're all developmental educators and we're obviously interested in this field. So the question really is, what does this non-cognitive affect of motivation have to do with me as a developmental educator, and what does it have to do with my developmental students, and how can I take something out of this presentation and use it and learn something? So really, I think what it comes down to is that the biggest key, or the biggest point that I've learned through this research, is that our job is not to motivate. It's actually to prevent amotivation. And amotivation is basically the idea of things prohibiting students from being motivated. So I used to think that my job as a teacher was to actually motivate my students. And after researching the topic further, I've learned that taking the responsibility of motivating my students is not only ineffective, but it can be insulting to the student. So I thought about how I would feel when someone, would tell me, hey, I'm trying to motivate you, and I think that, when I kind of checked in to see what my emotional response to that was, I felt a little offended. It's like, well, why would someone feel the need to motivate me? Maybe I feel like my motivation is enough, or maybe I'm already given 100%, or maybe I don't, I don't care enough about this particular topic, and my motivation is somewhere else. Like, in other words, it really gave me this different perspective to see what it would feel like for someone to, be constantly trying to motivate me. But it did make me really think more about what Sugunro stressed in this notion of preventing amotivation. So by addressing those 8 motivational factors that we talked about a couple slides ago, then I can contribute to students' motivation without feeling responsible for their motivation. So I can contribute by not causing reasons for them to lose their motivation. And I just felt like that was really helpful for me. It gave me something tangible that I could actually think about and work on in my classroom. Wadkowski, who I think is one of the gurus in motivation, also noted that there's a certain amount of ineffectiveness of our current higher education system in the fact that it's really designed to promote extrinsic motivation as opposed to intrinsic motivation. For instance, students, look at this project, right? I was motivated to learn about motivation, but was I really motivated to sit here and record myself, do this presentation? No. But my extrinsic motivation of getting a grade helped me along with that. Our higher education system is set up that way, so it's based on grades. It's based on competing with students against the students in order to get into certain programs. In order to be able to get certain jobs, there's a whole lot of extrinsic motivation built into our system. And what Wadkowski is suggesting is that, if we could somehow change that, if we could start over and wipe the slate clean, that it would be much more effective to teach using intrinsic motivators in the classroom as opposed to the extrinsic motivators, because it follows along more organically with our desire to learn as human beings. And so this is one of the reasons why I chose about 20 pages from a book written by Ginsberg and Wadkowski about this particular concept that has to do with motivation in the classroom and how much it relates to culture. And so I thought that was extremely interesting. It's beyond the scope of this particular presentation right now, because I'm already at 13 minutes. But it takes what we're talking about right now, and I just felt like it just goes into much more depth about some topics that I have felt have been extremely interesting to all of us as we've been going through our discussions in both of our classrooms. So anyways, one other note I wanted to say, according to Yeager et al., that students are more persistent in their academic goals when intrinsically associated with positively affecting society as opposed to the extrinsic reward of earnings. So even at the high school level, and like freshmen in college, they basically notice that if a student is connecting what they're learning to their ability to go out into the world and make a difference and make a positive effect on people, on humanity, on society, then they are more motivated to finish their degree, to show up in class, to do a particular assignment even, as opposed to an extrinsic motivation of something like, oh, you're going to earn a lot of money. That's really a shortcoming in many ways. So as developmental educators, I feel like we need to help foster intrinsic motivation by attempting to provide those 8 motivating factors for adult learners and creating a culturally responsive framework of motivation in the classroom, which is what you'll discover as you read the Ginsberg and Wadkowski little snippet from their book, by focusing on 5 constructs that you see on this chart. So the one is establishing inclusion, then there's developing attitude, enhancing meaning, engendering competence, and then finally the whole picture is implementing a culturally responsive pedagogy. So this concludes my presentation, and I felt like you were just sitting right in the room talking to me. So I really appreciate your attention and hope you have a really great week. Thank you.